Hey, we're back with Connor's comment. Like this video right now to keep me on your screens and off of the streets. I just finished my degree in criminology. And we're going to put it to good use right away, analyzing the huge change in Canadian gun law that seemingly happened overnight. Like this video right now if you want to see more topics like this covered. Now, where do you get the right? I'm just going to be helping you guys break down why this happened, give a little bit of an explanation why our Prime Minister overnight can make huge sweeping gun law. The reason that this gun law came into fruition was because of the mass shooting that happened in Nova Scotia. As sad and as disgusting as that act was, we still need to analyze why the Prime Minister can change laws and not really have to consult anybody to do it. This video isn't an attack on anybody who thinks that guns should be banned or that we should keep all of our guns. It's just one that analyzes the law that allows our Prime Minister to change laws in the way he did. So on May 1st, Canada announced the new gun ban. All of the guns were long guns and they were specified as assault style guns. 1,500 military style guns were now banned. Trudeau said their families deserve more than thoughts and prayers. Canadians deserve more than thoughts and prayers. Let's analyze some of the laws, starting from the top all the way down to the most recent gun regulation. So to begin, we always start with the Charter of Rights and Freedom. That's what gives Canadians all of their rights, all of their freedom. It's in the name. But Section 1 of the Charter only guarantees what is deemed a reasonable execution of those rights and freedoms. Or in more accurate terms, if the government deems that what you're doing with your rights and freedoms isn't a reasonable use of those rights and freedoms, then they can be restricted. Freedom of speech is only freedom of speech if the Canadian government deems is a reasonable use of that freedom of speech. What's key is the use of the word reasonable. Who deems what reasonable is? And let's remember that word, because I bet you it's going to come up again. Bet you it's gonna. Probably does. It does. Pretty consistently. In Canada, we have no right to own a gun. It's a freedom to own a gun. So it's something that the government allows us to do within reasonable restrictions. We go down a level into the criminal code. Section 117. In making regulations, the governor in council may not prescribe anything to be a prohibited firearm if the thing is described as reasonable for use in hunting or sporting purposes. Right there at 117, you cannot make a weapon illegal if it can be used for reasonable purposes. Purposes that government deems are okay. 84(1)(d), any firearm that is prescribed to be a prohibited firearm can be illegal. So it's basically whatever they say that they want it to be, because they want to cover their bases. In looking at the Firearms Act, so that's underneath the criminal code, section 117, it lays out all of the specifics of what can be regulated around a gun. So basically think about anything that can be involved with a gun, whatever it may be, they can restrict it. Laying a proposed regulation in section 118(1). Subject to subsection 2, the federal minister shall have each proposed regulation laid before each house of parliament. If you want to make law regarding gun ownership, then you have to give it to parliament. If they deem that that is a reasonable restriction on gun ownership, then they can apply it. The Prime Minister didn't do that. It didn't go through the House, it didn't go through the Senate, so I think we got it, but we can stop him in his tracks. Until you look at the exception clause. The exception of urgency, the urgency exception. If something's urgent, I guess it can't go to Parliament. If the Prime Minister thinks it's so urgent that this cannot go to Parliament, then he can just say, this is so urgent, I gotta do it. Written into law. Any Prime Minister can just say, this is urgent, we need to do it right now. It's my opinion as the Prime Minister that this is an urgent circumstance, and then next thing you know, there's a new law. If they don't like the gun that you have, it's an urgent restriction. I need to have that gun right now. Sorry, that's a reasonable restriction of your freedom. Give me that gun right now, sir. The fact is that he's allowed to do it. Isn't that crazy? I'm actually all wrong about this. The vagueness continues where all he has to do is make a statement of reasons as to why he made that law, and then it's completely legal that he did. It doesn't even say when he needs to do it. Prime Minister could just make a statement of reason as to why he made that law, and then that law is a law. Oh my god, it's so fucking stupid. When we give all of the power to them to determine what is reasonable and what's not, and then we just have to kind of So analyzing the new acts, the governor in council is not of the opinion that anything prescribed to be a prohibited firearm is reasonable for use in Canada for hunting or sporting purposes. So basically what that's saying is that all of this stuff laid out is not reasonable for hunting or sporting purposes. A lot of the guns here laid out. We got the AR variants, AR-15, classic, the one that everybody's afraid of. Spooky, spooky, spooky gun. Is the stupidest restriction I've ever seen. The Tom Sawyer Jolly Roger. I'm curious, how could they restrict the Tom Sawyer Jolly Roger of all guns? So not exactly getting what I thought I would get, but also getting what I kind of thought I would get. Comment below if you know what the Tom Sawyer Jolly Roger is. So right here, there's a regulatory impact statement. Statement explains why these laws came into fruition, their reasoning behind making this. For that section 118, where he has to make the statement of reasons. This is meant to prevent the deadliest mass shootings that are commonly perpetrated by assault-style firearms. The government of Canada recognizes that their inherent deadliness makes them unsuitable for civilian use and a serious threat to public safety. This is all opinion-based law. That man right there can make the law all by himself. Assault-style firearms are not suitable for hunting or sport shooting purposes. That's their opinion. Given the inherent danger that they pose to public safety. The newly prescribed firearms are primarily designed for military or paramilitary purposes, tactical or military design. Can somebody find the Tom Sawyer Jolly Roger? I'm curious if it really fits that description. It is the view of the government that those firearms are unreasonable and disproportionate for such purposes. Significant risk that these firearms pose to public safety outweighs any justification for their continued use availability within Canada, given the numerous types of firearms that remain available for lawful ownership. You have this gun, but that gun seems a little bit too dangerous. But there's also this gun that can also do sport shooting, that can shoot a deer or a vermin or whatever. Vermin. So why do you need to have that gun when you can just use this one? That one's too dangerous. Just take that one. It's a little less dangerous. Reduce the number and availability of assault-style firearms and other firearms that exceed safe civilian use in Canada. So 1. Have semi-automatic action with sustained rapid-fire capability. 2. Are of modern design. Somebody find that Tom Sawyer Jolly Roger, because I feel like that's not a modern gun. I just imagine it's like a flintlock, pirate-style type of gun where you pack it full. I don't know, I could be wrong, but that's what I'm imagining. 3. Are present in large volumes in the Canadian market. That Tom Sawyer Jolly Roger are in large volumes in the Canadian market. I could be wrong, maybe they do, but I really don't think so. They are not reasonable for hunting or sport shooting purposes. Reasonable, right? It's that common term, it's what they always use, kind of breaks down everything. Canadians have no right to a gun. It is just a freedom to own a gun. That freedom is a little too excessive, then they restrict it. Where things said by him, who just represents the plurality of Canadians, so not even the majority of Canadians, not even 50% of Canadians. He has the power to say, I'm of the opinion the Tom Sawyer Jolly Roger aren't of reasonable purpose for Canadians. Section 1 always gives them the right to reasonably restrict whatever they see fit. I don't like that at all, and I don't think you should either. If we elect them and they deem it reasonable, if he decides to choose, or if the Canadian government decides to make a law that thinks it's reasonable to have this urgency exception, then they can. There's nothing we can do about it. Leave a comment down below what you think about this new law change, whether you think it's reasonable for them to restrict it, if you think it's a good thing or a bad thing to have an urgency exception, what other laws should have urgency exceptions on them. Leave a comment down below, like the video, subscribe, share, give me your thoughts. Thanks for watching.